Well, hello and welcome back to my cellar. I'm only wearing this now because when I read you can't see me. Might see what's Curmudgeon in the cellar. A friend of a friend made a few of these up. Well, oddly enough, this past weekend at GameHole, I got a few questions. How do I get one? How do I get one? Well, here's the thing. Because we could only probably make up like 10 at a time, they're going to run probably between $25 and $30 a piece, and then postage, and that's without me making anything. I don't want to make anything. If my friend's friend can, fine. So if anybody's out there really serious, well then, yeah, let me know. And so, oop, shock, I'm bald. All right. This first one, I'm actually going to put my glasses on to read it. It's a very excellent piece of writing and summation. So I'm going to read it and then talk about it. Okay, the only thing I disagree with in all of your posts here is the comment about character and race leveling. While I agree that one of Gary's reasonings behind race level limits had to do with balancing powers that demi-humans had versus humans, I don't believe it ended there. He held several views beyond powers that led to the limits. One was his belief that humans, among all other races, had more of a conquest or lust for power than the other demi-human races, and therefore spent more of their shortened lifespans in pursuit of such things. While dwarves, although very formidable in combat tactics, were more interested in mining, elves with beauty and art, and gnomes with creating, and halflings with enjoying life. Thus, although these races lived longer than humans, they didn't advance as far. This could be attributed to two factors. Number one, the game assumes a starting age for first-level characters, basically teens, which is reflected in the varying age ranges of each race. By the time the demi-humans reach the level Gary gives as a stopping point, it's not necessarily due to that they can't advance beyond that. It's more like they don't want to continue adventuring anymore. Their thirst satisfied. They go back home to pursue that which is more natural to them. Remember, in the immortal words of Captain Barbarossa, it's more like guidelines. Do what you will with the rules. As DM, it's your world. Make of it what you will. I personally don't use level limits in my game. I prefer to let players play whatever race they want and level as high as they can before they die. But that's my game. It's no more wrong or right than the DM who uses those limits. And remember, Gary was first and foremost a DM. These limits were his rules. Being that he wrote the game, I think it's better to give a stricter template and let DMs scale back as opposed to writing one in which the rules are scant and thereby making a DM create his own from scratch. Anyway, that's my opinion. Cheers and happy gaming. Some really good points in there that absolutely justify using limits if that's what you want to do. I've never really adhered to the limits myself, so I can't criticize that. I'm just saying that, that's what Gary wanted, and that's what he hoped to, and that's the way the game started out, trying to balance all those things. Of course, the second game I ever played, I was playing a dwarf and was immediately, as a result of the game, promoted to a higher level than Myrmidon, which was 5th level, and that's all dwarves could supposedly advance to. So, right away I had scant regard for that rule. Oh, I just realized you can see. Aha, you can see my Chinese dragon. All right, Kim, did you come up with the sundering and low and high magic areas for your game world before those ideas were used in Forgotten Realms? I recall wild magic areas in 2nd edition of AD&D Forgotten Realms, and it was even a later edition when the Sun Ring took place in the Forgotten Realms? No. And this is a absolute classic case of parallel development. When I quit gaming, I quit role-playing and only boarded and minied. And then when I came back, I only did D&D. And as my former partners at Elder to tell you, I religiously avoided reading other people's other people's stuff, and stuck to what I knew, old school D&D, OD&D, whatever. Okay, so I can honestly say that no, that was no influence. As to the chronology, I think I wrote this stuff up maybe in, I don't know, 08, 09. I'd have to go back and look at the closed Dragonfoot threads to see when I started talking about it. And I may have had a different name for my world back then, but the principle remained the same. And because of the wild magic run amok, the Chromatic Council was formed. And I used the low and high magic in there because I've read a number of different books with ley lines and magic for. I just like the idea that there are these unknown places in my world, because my world underwent really cataclysmic events, and I've written a whole history I'll have to find someday. It's probably on an old hard drive. But to the best of my knowledge, no. And as for chronology, I don't know. Maybe there was a stray thought floating through the ether that we both caught. I couldn't say. But I can say that I believe that, I know that everything I created was new to me, because I thought I'd created it. And with my religious, almost fanatical, I won't read anybody else's stuff, I'm pretty sure that it's pure. Sometime, probably in this next week, you're going to get a bonus video. The Curmudgeons in cars coming from GameHole. Yeah, it was fun. The phone was falling off the holder. A couple of things going up and going down. But we had fun. All right, I just finished reading John Peterson's book, Game Wizards, The Epic Battle for Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I just painted a bunch of those figures, which Jim took to GameHole and sold out on. Have you read the book, and if so, what's your opinions? No, I haven't read it yet. And I've asked people that have to, no spoilers. The book briefly mentions your departure from being the editor of Dragon. You may have mentioned previously as to why you left, but I do not recall. Could you please repeat why you departed TSR? I have mentioned only that I left because I was the first one that the Blooms put in their sights. Any more details than that, I don't and won't go into, because the only two other people are both dead. Gary and Brian are both dead. So I'll take that to my grave. Whatever happened to multiple-headed dragons? I remember hearing about a group of adventurers in the 80s battling three-headed dragons, but it might have been six heads, of course. It might have been six. Of course, Tiamat always shows up to destroy multiple-headed dragons. Now, that is high-level campaigning, which leads to another question of why the late 70s, early 80s was the watermark of epic adventures. I wasn't aware it was, but I think I have an idea. That era had more players of younger age, preteens, which is something that 5e never was capable of attracting. If you don't believe me, remember that era when the game became a Saturday morning cartoon and school cafeteria tables had multiple games played daily for years. And who can forget Dragon's Lair? Okay. I'm not sure why that was a watermark. I think that Great Adventures kind of fell by the wayside with the additions that kept coming out and changing crap. And who wants to spend 3 months of their life writing a great adventure for a rule system that's going to be obsolete next year? And that's a problem with some, 1 and 2, first and second edition were very, very compatible. They started getting squirrely at 3 and kept veering, taking further paths away from, and so that's my opinion. And yeah, I'm delighted, to have heard about the cafeteria tables and everything. I've had many, many anecdotal stories brought to me by people who did it. Okay, this is an interesting rules interpretation question. And tonight I'm going to be identifying a few things I'm saying as opinion pieces as opposed to question answers. Haven't come to one yet. Can a single PC fend off a group of opponents without engaging in battle for a round or so while the PC's companions rush to their aid? How would you work this out? Would you call for a roll of some sort or just role play it? Well, you use the word round. And to me, rounds are portions of a turn. You could certainly elect not to do your action if you have an early round. Say if you're the second of a 10 segment round, if you're the second to go, but none of them have anything until much later, you could elect to wait, if that's what you're talking about. If you're talking about the party being split up and you're trying to stall without actually using your combat while they all come around the corner and join you or whatever, that I guess would be role play as you're dodging and going, and and doing stuff like that and avoiding being squashed. That is such a situational question. I don't believe there is a hard and fast answer. If you mean round as a combat segment, round, then the only thing I could see would be electing to go later or doing other distracting things. Again, the terminology is indistinct, and if you want to follow up on this, do in the next after this one, and I'll try to address it further. I have found a sponsor. The Independent Publishers Union and I have reached a tentative agreement, and I will have a steady supply of my favorite energy drink. I'm just deciding which one. Anyway, you asked how long did it take me to get through high school. Okay, I'm going to condense this. 6 years. Okay, you're from Australia, and you break your education up differently. You go, 7 up. We do 1 to 6 or 1 to 5. If it's 1 to 6, then 7, 8, 9 is a middle school, and 10, 11, 12 is a high school. Some school districts go 9, 10, 11, 12 as high school. Some school districts have an intermediate, 5 and 6, or even 6 and 7. A lot of it depends on the school district, at least around here. A lot of that depends on their facilities. The school district that my kids graduated from, with two different names because it consolidated, and now has all their middle and high school in one building. So there are no middle schools in our school system now. It's all in one. Okay. The modern ship combat was called, it was called Harpoon. That's the only one that ever got any splash and interest in it back then. And I thought it was, a harpoon was a simulation. There's different kinds of games. There's tabletop games that are for fun, but you can play seriously. There's recreation type games, simulations of some of the older Avalon Hill games that were not nearly as gritty. Then there are the higher level games that get into much more detail and grit and nitpicking. Harpoon was somewhere between the middle and the high one. As a simulation, it appeared to be very accurate. As a game to play, unless you loved it, it was very complex and took a while to do the turns. The turns were not short. But as a simulation, it was excellent. Okay, further to you say you don't like Warhammer nor the AD&D battle system. No, I'm not fond of it. I don't dislike it, I'm just not fond of it. Any other fantasy miniature war games? Do you like any other fantasy miniature war games? Well, I don't play a lot of fantasy miniatures for a couple of good reasons. Number one, I don't own any fantasy miniatures anymore. Everything I had, I sold off years and years ago. I know I'm supposed to be looking up here, and I'm looking at myself, not from infatuation. I believe the Chaos Wars rules that now have formerly they are Ralpartha rules that now Iron Wind has. I think those are very good fantasy rules, fast, easy to play, has a good feel and a fair level of grit to it. To be quite honest, I can't think of another that I played well and often enough to have an opinion about. But I do believe the Chaos Wars rules are quite good. Quite good. They have they're not quite as simple as chainmail, but they're not nearly as complex as some of the others were. There are certainly no War Games Research Group rules. You don't like Advanced Squad Leader, but what do you think of the original? I think the original was outstanding. Again, a detail-oriented game that if you were playing against someone that was also, knew the game well, moved well, because you both knew what was going on. It had a rather steep learning curve, in my opinion, it was steep but short. A bunch of things, none of which were terribly complex, I guess is what I'm saying. And I will admit to a bias that I became better friends with John Hill after he retired from doing the spook work that he did, which made him creating and publishing games all those years. And he bitterly hated it, the Advanced, because they asked him to do it, and he saw it simply as going back to the cow for another pail of cream or milk or whatever. Sorry, mangled metaphor there. And when he said he'd rather not, and they sent somebody else to it, he got really, really angry and couldn't do anything about it. And so I didn't care for the extra layer of grit, and because my friend John, the original author, didn't like it, I guess I don't like it either for that reason also. Or I'd be less inclined to like it. I justify using clerics using maces and such in my games with the idea that the weapons they're allowed to use are symbolic of divine authority. The staff and the mace have long been seen by cultures going back to the Mesopotamians as similar power and authority, the scepter, and are often associated with gods, particularly the heads of pantheons. Absolutely, great justification. I'll tell you why Gary did it. Gary based fighting clerics on Bishop Odo, who was William the Conqueror's brother, who was a big, robust guy that really liked going out and bashing heads. This was in the day of metal helmets, some of them full face or mostly full face. And he favored the mace because it got around supposedly got around the stricture that clerics shouldn't shed, priests shouldn't shed blood. Well, he figured, well, if you can't see the blood, I'm not shedding it. If I cave his skull in, I didn't shed any of his blood. Thin, but like so many things in the Catholic Church back then, a specious justification. But that's why Grace didn't get it. But this is good too. Absolutely. Okay, a response to the person that bought the old tavern. What'd they find? A bricked up wall hiding a portal to some other plane controlled by an old evil. There's an adventure. Why would anyone bring a 6-foot pike into a dungeon, you ask? Well, have you seen the things that live down there? Yes. Some of them are really ugly and dangerous. I'd want to keep as far away from them as possible. Okay, however, a pike is of no use unless you're in the throne room. And then you might have to lower it walking down the corridor to get to the throne room. It's certainly of no use in a dungeon except as a pokey pole. Drop it and then fight with something else. Pardon me. And then go back and get your pokey pole back. That's why. But I understand you want to keep Nessies at a distance. Okay, now this is an interesting question, and this person is a viewer, so I'm going to answer it here, and in so doing, make a point. Would you be willing to sign my 1E DMG and Player's Handbook? I live in Alaska and would be happy to pay for shipping both directions. Totally understand if you'd rather not. Figured I'd ask the question. Thank you. Certainly, if it means enough for you to book the postage and everything, and both ways, I'd be happy to. I'll simply sign it. If you like, I'll personalize it. Glad to. I'm always glad and humbled when people ask me to sign stuff. I used to have a different policy than what I have now. I used to not want to sign anything that I didn't, have a major part in. But as the years have gone by, people are taking particularly rule cyclopedias and collecting signatures in them. So I've unbent a little bit. I won't sign anything 3.5. No. But okay, sure, I'd be glad to. Private message me on Facebook or whatever. And oh, by the way, Facebook Messenger is not the best way to get a hold of me, because I hardly ever look at it, because I'm not even sure where the hell it is or what the icon is. So you can always PM me. Would you ever allow a player to roll 2d10 in place of a 1d20? Is there ever a case for eliminating absolute fail? No. You skew the table. We designers work in 5% increments for, I don't want to skew it. I don't play with critical fails. I don't make you drop your axe on your foot. No. But I do on a natural 20. Natural, not 16 plus 4. On a natural 20, I allow some extra damage. Just because I like to, and it's fun. Thaco the Clown should be a badge of honor of all over 30 who enjoyed playing AD&D or earlier editions. AD&D 2E or earlier. Just that Thaco the Clown is wearing a fluffy clown suit, looking a bit chubby and stocky. Okay. I wasn't clear apparently last time, 2 weeks ago. I'm not personally set off. I meant the comment to be more of, oh geez, how petty is that? Their little cutesy in-joke. Their Easter egg, if you will, in the sense of what used to get hidden in the video games. And some of the things we used to hide in the rules. Name drops and stuff. I just thought, oh, how petty is that? Now you're going to make fun of the people that are already being criticized. Yeah, I mean, come on. Grow up. Okay, what I always dislike and that slows the game down is people who do not know their spells, or the player that finds some unknown spells that has to be looked in the books. I always know mine and write down little notes on it. Absolutely. If I were back running a campaign, and I'll explain why I say if you came to the table with your spells and didn't know their radius and didn't know their general principles, what kind of wizard are you? Now, if there are, counter with this means that kind of stuff, okay, but that should be an interpretation of who's running the game. That should be worked out and adjudicated by who's running the game. The unknown spell that they just found, they don't get to use that right away because I don't let them take time to read it. Because first time you read any unknown spell, it's going to take some deciphering. Because kind of in my world, everyone's kind of a little different written, and everybody that wrote down a spell used slightly different icons and glyphs and hieroglyphs and what have you. So no, that has to go and be home and studied, unless, of course, well, no, that's what it is for an unknown spell. Tough, you don't get to use it today. Absolutely, clerics, you gotta know. Now, why I say that. In my Wheel of Blame games, because I use clerics and play clerics so much differently, I allow the, if it's at the table, I provide a set of clerical spells and for them to use and thumb through because it's more prayer book in the way I use it. And if it's in a wheel game, I tell the person setting up the Wheel of Blame game to make sure that the cleric, whoever chooses to play the cleric and somebody better, and make sure that they have access to the old school first edition clerical spells. Or not even first edition, actually, it's the 3 Little Brown Books. That's the book I hand out. All the spells that are available in the Little Brown Books and the supplements. It's a compilation thing I made up years ago. That's why I equivocated on the previous answer. Uh-oh, my printer jumped. Oh, is that how I did? Okay. In response to my offhand quip about no longer being able to call certain games that we played certain games, an interesting viewpoint. He's from the land down under, and that they played that type of game, but certainly not. They tend to decide with the indigenous peoples, and so. And I can certainly, with what happened to the first peoples of Australia, I can certainly see that. And that they then played something that was basically war. And yeah, I understand that one because we played guns. We played guns. All right, and I want to make sure this got all messed up. Okay, all right. And we didn't always specify, though I will say growing up when I did in the 50s, we often fought the Sons of the Rising Sun and the evil Goose Steppers. And sometimes we were gangsters and sometimes we were just out shooting each other. And I know lots of that's the way it was. And then this individual goes that they also played critters against imaginary aliens inspired by the main. Well, I didn't have that inspiration because we didn't have any alien movies yet. And you couldn't play against Rodan or Godzilla because they won every time. All right. This is, again, I'm answering a question here. Really enjoy your stuff. May I mention your YouTube on my own? Certainly, I would like everybody to tell their friends and click. And I don't have any plans to monetize this with break-in commercials and stuff like that. So you're not going to be inundated with that kind of crap. All right, because the printer apparently is spread out over 2 sheets. Or, yeah, 2 different pages, so I got half and half, pardon me. Okay, here we go. You can't use that backdrop. This isn't the curmudgeon in the forest. Okay, another one on that one. You're only enticing more curiosity what's behind that painting now. Maybe the special stash of magic pumpkin seeds, or a big twister map and a kinky unpublished D&D roleplay meets tantric yoga book. No, it's just a mess. Tim, it's not possible to move the webcam monitor closer to you so the background painting will appear larger and thus fully color the background. No, my camera is sitting on the top of my monitor, and I really don't want to get any more complex than that. I'd be nice if it would zoom in and zoom out, then I would play with it a little, but it doesn't, and I kind of like keeping it low tech, low key. I am, after all, a curmudgeon, and it pretty much, I'm about half a Luddite. Next person says, I like seeing the clutter. It's very postmodern. If you could just get the light from the glow of a hobo trash fire, it'd be complete the same. Well, thanks. I think Cheryl would probably have a little bit to say if I started a hobo trash fire down here. All right. I would like Tim to erect a painting of his cluttered bookshelf. We should kickstarter a painting commission for Boris Vallejo. Tuesday before I go to the con, I come down with the first cold I've had in over a year. If I'd only been attending, by myself, no commitments, I'd have said right there, I ain't going. Wednesday, when I had to leave, I woke up feeling like I wasn't going to die. In fact, better than I expected, and I'm still just getting over the remnants. So I'm not ill. I'm just getting over a head cold that went down into my chest for a little bit, but that's normal for me this time of the year. Okay, back to this. Boris Vallejo. I don't think so. He says a Kickstarter with Prince. You might talk to Larry Elmore or one of the, oh geez, oh, I'm going to feel bad. One of the other old TSR artists. They might be more inclined to listen to something like that. Okay, next question. Do you plan to release your World of Mccanda? Well, okay, let's talk about plans. I've recently updated my plans. I have Weaver Queen coming out in Brazil. I have a Kickstarter that was supposed to start and hasn't, but I'm probably going to go somewhere else with it if I don't get immediate progress. And when I say somewhere else, decent financing to do it upright. And I have an adventure that was only half printed by Eldridge that I have the other half for that would make a great dandy Kickstarter after that. And then I have an idea and that I've been working on and taking notes on and reading up on that involves time traveling a little. A lot for the players at first, because I want the adventure is set in North, South America, Central America, and Southern Mexico. It's 3 adventures that are linked together and I take that period in time because I can have Mayans, I can have Aztecs, and I can have either, well, because yeah, I know I'm not exactly historical. I'm also going to have South Americans, and I haven't decided exactly where that's going yet. And at each occasion of being transferred, the players will come in their swords and all that, and they will be transformed into a band of traders, well armed, of the Cloud people, which were a semi-mythical tribe that lived way up in the Andes, higher than the Incas, and were known as traders, and therefore kind of sacrosanct because they were kind of mythical. So if the players get their shit together, they can pull this off and make it their way through this world. Their gold will be changed into trade goods, bundles of feathers, blocks of jade, cubes of salt, They won't, they'll just be changed. Their swords will be changed into mahakitls, so they'll look the part, but it'll be totally new and foreign to them. They'll have very little commonality with anything they've played before. They might know what a jaguar or panther looks like, or a big constrictor snake. But all the other people that they'll run into will, anyway, it's a very big and involved thing, and it's all history. And if these other couple of things come together, then I'm going to do that. Now, to get to the other question about Mccanda. I wrote up a ton of words about Mccanda and what happened and that, and some of it's on Dragon's Foot, some of it's on old hard drives or buried in files. That eventually, yeah, I might just for the fun of it release it as, hey, welcome to my world. I might. I'm thinking about it. But I got to start getting a little quicker because I don't know how many years I got left to do this. I'd like to follow up to what I now realize was a lengthy comment, though I never imagined it would ever make the show. And use OGL stuff and forget about I'm going to go straight OGL with everything from now on. The OGL only really restricts certain fancy monsters, and my boulet isn't on there, so I'm afraid of just expect boulets everywhere. There's something to look forward to. I may even do a mini adventure of the boulet, the island of the boulet. Oh, shit. Yeah. You find out all those the secrets of the boulet breeding, and that there are multicolored, there are other colored boulets that each have individual quirks and powers, and they're varying sizes. I've already figured out all that. It's written up somewhere in a file. And thank God for a backup. Let's see. Okay, another one here about if I'm offended by the thaco clown, I'm being called a snowflake. No, I'm not offended. I'm pointing out, I thought that, how snarky is that? Okay, let them have their little joke. And yeah, I think I gave that one before. Okay, now we're going to get to some opinion stuff. Okay, these are my opinions and my commentary. Right now, there's been a lot of flack going on about biases in the old stuff, sexism, racism, and it's causing a lot of it's creating a lot of hot air and steam and smoke. So I would think that people would recognize this. So the other day on Kickstarter, what did I see? But a Kickstart for a big resin print of it's a 3D resin print of a very scantily clad woman with huge bazingas chained to a pillar. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Come on. And it didn't even appear to me to be in a scale that would be used, like with dungeon train stuff and that. I could be wrong about that, but it didn't appear. So what purpose is it? So prepubescent boys can put it on their bookshelf and ogle it? It didn't appear to me to be title art from any adventure I'm familiar with. Oh yeah, that's real with it, isn't it? Okay. I saw an article, a running argument. Here we are, still opinion pieces. There's if you're on Facebook and you have any gaming things you click to, you get bombarded with Raid, Shadow Legends. And the picture I've been getting is an elf. This is all cartoony. An elf, again, really big bazingas, and hardly any clothes. I guess we all know what they're using to sell. Is it completely appropriate right now with all the other crap that's going on? Who are they trying to appeal to? All right. Another piece I saw, an argument going, Gary Gygax ruined alignments for D&D. There was some really, go find it on Facebook if you haven't already. There's some really, really excellent posts in explaining bang on what Gary did, arguing with the premise of the post. And one of the items that seemed to draw a lot of flack and a lot of attention and near fainting is lawful good. Now, good and lawful are not the same. Lawful means you follow a code of behavior. You could be. It really doesn't have anything to do with municipal rules or legislation or anything. It was kind of a way to indicate, okay, this race, this individual, was most likely to work, to respond, to act in a certain way. Good, evil, I think we all have a fair knowledge of that. Well, this person was outraged that the premise was given that a murderer was caught, tried, and hung, and that was lawful good. It is. Regardless of what your personal opinion is of capital punishment, your 21st century capital punishment opinion has little or no bearing on the milieu or the mythical setting that you're probably playing in. That is lawful good. Because the law says you shall not murder, you murdered, you were tried fair and square, you were executed. That is lawful good. In the meaning of those two words as applied to D&D. Gary didn't ruin it. How? Hey, that would say that he ruined something as he was creating it, which is asinine and absurd. And pretty goddamn full of themselves to think that. Here again, we see people playing a game that think they could have done it better. And so, therefore, whoever did it was wrong. Just like so many game reviews you see nowadays are not reviews of the game as it sits, but what the unqualified reviewer thinks the game should have been. Wrong. 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 Let's see if I'm out of the opinion woods yet. Okay. I'm out of the opinions. Now I'm back in opinions, but it's a review of GameHole. Hope you enjoyed the ride to GameHole and back again, the hole itself. How were your interactions? Did I catch up with any big glitterati? I'm not sure who a glitterati is. I know there were a few people prancing around that thought they were. but I think that was a minority opinion, but there always are. I saw and sadly, not enough of my industry friends, because not everybody could make it, but a bunch of them that I didn't see there, I know I'm going to see at Gary Con, so I have a few more months to wait. So it was great. From what I understood and what I was told, attendance might have been off 15%, give or take a little, maybe from the last time. But I'll tell you this, if there were 15% fewer people, they all came with 10% more enthusiasm and eagerness for the tribe to gather. The dealers in the dealer room that I spoke to said they did just fine. Like always, when you're a dealer, you're not holding, a big name product. When you're this kind of dealer, yeah, your results will vary because you never know exactly who's going to be there. But I heard nobody saying they got, they did way below what they expected, whatever. They had a whole dealer hall, and then they had booths set up all over down one side of the main entrance, including the Independent Publishers Union booth, which is right inside the door across from the information booth. But talk about choice seating. I scheduled 5 Wheels of Blame, 35 slots, 34 were sold, 34 showed up. We had a great time. A good time was had by all. Now, having said that, the only drawback, the main drawback, in my opinion, was it's really hard to run 17, 18 hours, which all my games eventually totaled up to. You have to project differently and harder through a mask. It's not raising your voice. It's not really shouting loud. It's more about projecting from your diaphragm. And I can tell you my diaphragm knew that it had been projecting. Other than that, everybody showed a double proof of X and or on their phone or whatever. And one of the more interesting pieces of ephemera that I've seen from game convention is one of those old wristbands, and mine's somewhere around here, that says vaccinated GameHole Con. 10, 15, 20 years from now, that might be an interesting oddity. I won a game again. All the people that run games, names are thrown in a hat, and they draw a bunch out, and there's this huge table full of all kinds of games. This year there were Nerf pistols and stuff, and I got basically a card game that I think looks good, and so it's always nice to get a free game. I didn't buy much. Go to Google and put in Gummy Minis, MINIS, gummyminis.com. Wow. What a neat concept. These little demon minis, different kinds, shapes of minis, and you put them in an upside down bottle cap so you don't have to touch them, and you use them as minis, and then if you take it, you get to eat it. And he had 2 kinds of minis. He had fruit flavored, and he had what he called spicy. 5 different kinds of spicy. And I can tell you that number 5, the bright red ghost pepper, is spicy. Tasty. But after about 20 seconds, when my lips started sweating through my mustache, I swallowed it. It was good, though, I gotta admit. And there's a connection to a charitable organization that he's attached to, or some of the profits go to. So well worth looking into. Next time you're at Gary Con or a Midwest Con that she goes to, you got to check out Lisa Sell's booth. She makes the most amazing resin masks. for like masquerades or whatever. She sold 2 great big huge dragon heads mounted on plaques for hanging on your wall. I stopped by Jerry Savage's Savage Creations. He makes neat things with stone and leather products, and he made me a nice a bespoke pouch that I can put on my belt at cons to put my enormous Samsung phone into and not have it falling out of my shirt every time I bend over. And I bought one thing from him for 18 pieces of gold. I thought, whoa, what a deal. I acquired the Horn of Summoning. Apparently, it summons ducks and geese. Now, if they're giant ducks and geese, wow, because I mean to tell you, an angry goose is nobody to mess with in real life. All kidding aside, the only complaint I had was, and it's not the con's fault because of what the pandemic did. There weren't as many food wagons there. And my absolute favorite of all time, the meatball slider wagon, wasn't there, though I hear they're going to be back next year. I certainly hope so. But I got to see a lot of good friends, got together with my peeps, my tribe, however you want to call it, did a couple of interviews, got interviewed for a documentary that's being made, and apparently it's going to be shown in Canada by the end of the year. I don't know. It was a great time. Support your local cons. Now we're in the downs. Now the only cons going are local smaller cons at colleges and what have you, because it is winter after all. I'm housebound con-wise until February when I go to Total Con. So stay in, learn some new games, be nice to each other. We're all going to be living indoors now for a while, so we got to learn to live with each other again. See, I guess that's all. Dodata Gobi.
Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon